reflecting on a thought here, and that thought is that it seems to me that cessationism, John MacArthur's type cessationism, and the same could also be said about B.B. Warfield's type. There are two different types of cessationism. B.B. Warfield's type of cessationism is based off of just denying the authentic, right? Basically, what he did is he read every Catholic saint book about their lives and just said, I don't believe that because I'm not Catholic. But in John MacArthur's case, it seems what he did is he just read a bunch of really ludicrous stories and said, yeah, doesn't that look stupid and foolish? I don't believe in that. So whereas B.B. Warfield's cessationism seems to be based in a sort of naturalism that's based off of denying what is probably authentic miracles, John MacArthur's cessationism seems to be based off of a naturalism that's based in, yeah, look at all these stupid charismatics and their wild behavior. I don't like that. I don't like that style. I don't believe them. They look like a bunch of buffoons, and so I don't believe in that. So whereas like B.B. Warfield's kind of like more off of denying that which is authentic, uh, John MacArthur's more like, hey, look at all these false prophets. This is the only thing there is. So it's like B.B. Warfield's a positive cessationist and John MacArthur's a negative cessationist, but neither of them are correct because neither of them are studying the authentic and the true. Both of them are grounded in a skepticism and a rationalism that mixes the Bible in a sort of a cafeteria Christianity naturalism, a sort of a pick and choose cherry picking skepticism that says, I'm going to have the Bible and keep my rationalism and eat my cake and eat it too with my rationalistic mindset and pick and choose my views of the Bible so that it works for me, so that I can create a doctrinal Christianity that works for me in my philosophical system. Meanwhile, secretly, I'm an atheist or an agnostic, and I don't want to admit that to anybody because that's the way I was brainwashed in my public school growing up. But secretly, yeah, I'm actually an atheist. But not that anybody needs to know that. I'll just tell everybody that I'm a cessationist, and I'll give off this vibe that I'm grounded in sound doctrine. See, the problem is that the Bible is filled with revelation, and what you've done is you've turned the Bible into a classroom textbook, and it just doesn't work. The natural mind is going to receive that and laugh at it. And cessationism is filled with mockery. It's just filled with mockery and scoffing, much like skeptics mock and scoff at Christianity in general. In fact, one of the studies that I did showed me that B.B. Warfield's cessationism was grounded off of Adolf von Harnack, a man who mocked at the entire supernatural of the Bible. I'm looking at the index of Charismatic Chaos by John MacArthur, and then I'm looking at the index of Strange Fire by John MacArthur, and I'm going to be looking for names that he's dealing with predominantly. Why? Because I'm going to build the case that John MacArthur's belief that the Holy Spirit has ceased from providing experiential and miraculous things to Christians today is mainly based off of him looking at a bunch of ridiculous false prophets and saying, look, see, the genuine Holy Spirit isn't doing anything today because the only examples I have in front of me are a bunch of ridiculous false prophets. Now, I had a logic class and I had a logic tutor and I got an A in logic because of that, but that's some type of a logical fallacy right there. I don't know if we're looking at the tail or the head or the head or the tail or the cart or the horse or the horse or the cart, but that's a logical fallacy of something right there. And John MacArthur basically, this is my understanding. I've heard him talk about this stuff a lot. He doesn't believe the Holy Spirit does Holy Spirit things today because the only examples today are a bunch of ridiculous, ludicrous false prophets. The only examples. The only examples. Right. Um, I don't think that that's a very smart way to think about stuff. Um, and also, it only looks at Augustine at that one moment in his life where he was cessationist, but ignores the later on moment in the book in the City of God, book 22, where there's all these divine healings going on. So you can't cite theological authority and still be a cessationist with the full knowledge that Augustine canonized the Bible at the Council of Hippo and laid the theological groundwork for Latin Christianity, including Calvinism. He was temporarily a cessationist and then later on changed his mind because he has an abundance of healing testimonies in book 22 of City of God. But we're still going to say that today in the 1990s and in the 2000s that the Holy Spirit doesn't do divine healings or give visions and dreams to produce faith for them, because the only examples we can find today are evangelists and pastors that are patently false prophets. And so that's the only reason why the Holy Spirit doesn't do miracles today, is because everyone who's charismatic is a false prophet. What? What? No. Okay. The Holy Spirit can and does do miracles today, whether or not there are false prophets around. Okay, so the solution to this problem is to not give up on looking for the Holy Spirit if you haven't found him yet. You don't just get exasperated and just give up because you're tired of looking at bad examples of false prophets all the time. Here's another problem with cessationism. It looks at people too much instead of at the Holy Spirit for you and for me. Instead of asking yourself, what can you do to develop your prayer life and your worship life better, to experience the Holy Spirit in your life? Cessationism seems to be based off of indexing names and making lists of names of really, really bad examples of, every scandal, every fall, every slip up that every charismatic pastor has ever made in his entire life, and then writing off his entire life because he had a public scandal. And so therefore the Holy Spirit doesn't do anything today. No, there's some logical skips in going on here. Okay? Because even people in the Bible, like Samson, for example, okay, you can't say that the Holy Spirit didn't do anything in the time of Samson because Samson fell into sin and scandal. It says that the Spirit of the Lord departed from Samson. It also says the same thing about Saul because they both fell into sin. Okay. It doesn't say, oh, and the Holy Spirit wasn't doing anything at all in Samson and Saul's life ever because they were such horrible examples of false prophets. And so that's why cessationism was true in the time of the judges. What? But you see, that's the kind of logic you're going to get. Correct me if I'm wrong if you're reading Charismatic Chaos and Strange Fire. That's kind of the logic you're going to get. There's so many bad examples of charismatic pastors and charismatic evangelists that it leads one to the logical conclusion that the Holy Spirit doesn't do anything miraculous today. Because look at this huge list of preachers. It just goes to show the Holy Spirit doesn't do anything like that today. Because, like I said, the list of preachers proves it. What? Why does a list of preachers prove it? Do you see how rationalistic this mindset is? It's a rationalistic mentality. I have an index of names, and this proves the Holy Spirit doesn't do miracles today. What? Uh, I met a guy when I was he was a Plymouth Brethren pastor, And I was really preoccupied with the idea of wanting to learn about false religions so I could rebuke them someday. And he said, focus on the true, learn the true, stay in the word, focus on the gospel, learn the gospel, stay on the authentic. Don't get distracted by heretics, false prophets, and world religions. Stay on the true thing, master the true thing. Man, that's the truth. And that definitely applies to the Holy Spirit. If we want to understand the Holy Spirit, we don't need to be reading about bad examples. We need to be reading about good examples of the Holy Spirit, like Jonathan Edwards and John Wesley. You know, read about the Holy Spirit in their lives. Find some examples that you have a fairly high degree of confidence the Holy Spirit was moving in that man's life, and then reading about the Holy Spirit's activity in that guy's life. But you don't get that with John MacArthur. You read about Herbert Armstrong and William Branham and Mike Bickle and Charles Capps and Christian Science and Kenneth Copeland. And then you draw the conclusion after all of these names have been, rattled off. Well, I guess the Holy Spirit doesn't do miracles today then. What? What? Yeah. Need I mention Kenneth Hagin and Bill Heyman and Benny Hinn? And so that means the Holy Spirit doesn't do miracles today. What? But that kind of is it. But the only thing of it is that he gets academic about it, and it really sounds convincing. But that's essentially what he does. That's how John MacArthur shoots down Pentecostalism. That's how he shoots it down. He takes you through a list, this sort of an index prohibitorium, right? A list of prohibited, right, people, and says, see, these people said they have the Holy Spirit, but actually they don't, and so the Holy Spirit doesn't do anything today. What? Tell that to Samson and Saul. Tell that to the false prophet who got eaten by a lion after he withered the hand of the guy. The Holy Spirit works through people, works through broken vessels, even worked through Balaam one time. What kind of logic is this? This is silly. You can't disprove the activity of the Holy Spirit just by looking at bad examples. Bad examples don't disprove the activity of the Holy Spirit. I'm sorry, they don't. The Holy Spirit's one thing. Bad examples are another. You can't just add up a whole bunch of bad examples and be like, see, here's my conclusion. The Holy Spirit doesn't do any miracles today. Because the only people who ever talk about miracles are bad examples. And so therefore, the Holy Spirit doesn't do anything. Look, could it be that you don't know everything? Could that be a possibility? Cessationist evangelist, cessationist preacher. Could it be possible that you're not omniscient? Could it be possible that the Holy Spirit's in the area that you haven't quite read a book about yet? And like I said, what about the study of past revivals, like this revival of Jonathan Edwards? Have you adequately read up on that? Because he was a 5-point Calvinist, and the Great Awakening was an outpouring of the Holy Spirit, so they say. Have you really read about that enough? Honestly. Because it seems to me that this cessationism thing is based on looking at people like Jim Baker and Jimmy Swaggart all the time, and then drawing a snap judgment conclusion with a whole bunch of academic side trails that therefore the Holy Spirit doesn't do miracles today, and he doesn't say anything, and he can't be felt, and you just have to accept a Holy Spirit doctrine. I think this is silly, and it's also lazy, and it's also just a Baptist church culture, and people don't want to offend. And then people are left with this atheistic sort of residue mixed with a Bible Baptist culture and a fake God. And then they end up losing their faith. You wonder why? It's you never had faith in the first place. You didn't have that heart-searching, devil-may-care attitude. You know what I mean? You want to get to the point where it's just like, I don't care. I need the Holy Spirit. For me, I need the Holy Spirit. And I don't want my kids to go through life without knowing the Holy Spirit. So figure it out. It's a prayer thing. It's a prayer and it's a worship thing. It's concentrate your mind and stop reading books all the time. And focus on the Lord for more than 15 minutes. You can't just look at Jim Bakker and Jimmy Swaggart and say, therefore, there's no miracles today. That's pathetic.